Welcome to this introduction to the tool called Power Previewing. My name is Matthew Perini and I'm excited to be your guide through this tool. So which cornerstone will this tool help teachers develop? The answer is a culture of thinking and learning. It's all about helping students become more proficient readers, which leads to deeper learning, deeper comprehension, and of course, better thinking. Our guiding question is this: how can previewing text strategically, and that's a very important word, doing it strategically, and before reading, how can this process make reading more active for students, and how can it enhance their comprehension? To begin, we're all going to channel that middle schooler that still resides in all of us by saying out loud, duh. And why are we saying duh? We're saying it because we all want our students to become more powerful and self-sufficient readers, right? Say it with me, duh. Obviously, we all want our students to become better readers, but this raises a new three-letter word. How? How are we going to do it? To understand how, let's first focus in on what it means to be a proficient reader. Michael Presley is one of the foremost experts on proficient reading. Read what he says. And here's my question to you. What are the three most important words in this snippet? We contend that the three most important words are before, during, and after. Proficient readers are active. Their minds are active before reading, during reading, and after reading. So if great readers are conscious and active before, during, and after reading, this tool, Power Previewing, is going to focus heavily on before reading, on what great readers do before they begin reading a text. Now, it's not only before reading, because one of the things you'll see is setting up powerful before reading behaviors leads to much more active reading during reading. So let's begin by thinking about what you do when you approach a text for the first time. And as you're thinking about how you get ready to read, I want to introduce you to two readers. This is Carl. Carl is a highly proficient reader. This is Jason. Jason reads sometimes. He doesn't particularly enjoy reading, and he certainly doesn't think of himself as a great reader. Imagine both of these readers are approaching a text for the first time, a text they've never read. Here are some things that Carl would likely do that Jason probably wouldn't. Carl would call up his prior knowledge. What does he already know? Carl would actively preview the text. Look at the table of contents, skim through the text, look for chapter headings. Carl would make predictions. What is this going to be about? What might I learn? And Carl would establish a clear purpose for reading. Why am I reading this, and what do I hope to get out of it? One thing we want to make sure comes through loud and clear is this is not just something adult readers like Carl do. It's something that can be nourished, learned, and turned into a habit even before students come to school. Pre-readers sit on their parents' lap and look at the pictures and wonder, what's this going to be about? And of course, in primary classrooms, using story time as a chance to get students interested, to think about what they already know, and to make predictions about what's going to happen. And of course, as students progress through the grade levels, internalizing this power previewing habit, establishing a clear purpose, and activating your prior knowledge before reading. So the research is pretty clear. Proficient readers like Carl engage in certain behaviors before reading, and the goal of this tool is to help all readers engage in these same behaviors. One resource that can help with this are the organizers that are part of this tool. Students can use these organizers to practice and over time internalize the behaviors, the strategies that proficient readers use when they first come to a text. So let's take a quick look at the organizer for nonfiction. The organizer has spelled out for students what to look for when they skim. Headings, titles, bold information, charts, and tables, all those places where important information resides and where it hides, so that students can strategically search a text when they skim. It also reminds students and teaches students that structure is critical to comprehension. How is the text structured? What are its main sections? Proficient readers pay close attention to that because knowing how a text is organized before reading has a dramatic impact on understanding when you do the actual reading. So what other proficient reader behaviors and strategies are embedded in this organizer? Well, noticing what seems important and writing it down, but also prior knowledge. Prior knowledge is such a powerful tool, and proficient readers use it to make sense of new text. So does anything look familiar? Does it sound or relate to anything you've learned before? Calling up that prior knowledge. Also curiosity. What a powerful motivator that we sometimes forget about. What seems interesting to you? And not just interesting, proficient readers pay attention to what might be challenging for them before they read. What seems challenging or confusing? And do you have any strategies? Do you know any strategies for how you might address these challenges? Getting ahead of challenges before reading is a key proficient reader behavior. And last, predictions. What predictions can you make? And not just make them. Notice the organizer challenges and encourages you to check them as you read so that before reading behaviors become active during reading behaviors. Of course, an organizer is only one way to help students internalize these important skills. Take a look at how this primary teacher focused on just 4 questions and taught students to ask themselves these questions whenever they read a piece of nonfiction. It's really easy to simplify the process, but what you're doing, what's at the heart of this, is teaching students about the power of before reading. So what are the steps in this tool? How do we use it well in the classroom? Well, it starts with the organizer, or if you're using a simplified process like the one we just looked at, the questions, the prompts you're using to help students understand what they need to look for. Walk students through the process. Get them used to using the organizer so that eventually they won't need it. I want to point out that with this tool, you're actually getting 2 organizers, one for fiction and one for nonfiction. And of course, you can modify them for young readers. So here's a quick teacher talk tip associated with this first step. One of the things you'll want to do is discuss with students what are the benefits of skimming a text before we read it. Engage students in thinking about and talking about that. What's the purpose of previewing? What do we expect to happen when we preview? Why will it help us? How can we use it? Helping students understand the why is as important as helping them understand the what. Next, you want to use a sample text to explain and model the process. And modeling is so important. Students need to see how you do this, how you power preview or skim actively when reading a text. And one of the great things about the organizer is built right in for both nonfiction and fiction is a list of what to look for, where to put your attention when you conduct a power preview so that you can focus in on where important information is likely to be found. I also want to point out that with this tool, you have a wonderful resource, a classroom poster. Take a look at the poster. Notice all the P's. How will this help students remember and internalize the process for what it means to conduct a power preview? Next, you'll want to give students an opportunity to do it themselves, to use their organizers to preview a text. And of course, your goal is to provide help and coaching during this process. You can use guiding and focusing questions. What seems important? How does the text seem to be structured? What's interesting to you? You can suggest strategies for addressing specific challenges. If students notice, for example, that there's a lot of vocabulary words, what are some strategies they can use to master new vocabulary? And you want to encourage students to check their predictions when they read the text for real, to really work hard to make those predictions as good as they can so that they can read actively to confirm them later on. After students have read the text, it's important that you help them reflect. And again, questions, simple questions. How did the previewing affect what you paid attention to? Starting to get students more conscious of the process and the relationship between before reading and during reading. Did previewing make reading easier? Did it make it more enjoyable? Getting students to think about that. And how can you use it on your own? Helping students start to see that this is not something we do because my teacher told me. This is something we do because this is how great readers make meaning of challenging texts. And so the last step is all about creating conditions that encourage students to use it on their own. Make sure they have regular access to the organizers so that when they're conducting reading on their own, in another class, or for homework, they can use the power previewing process readily. Also, use that poster. Post it in your classroom, post it to your digital learning environment, have students print it out and post it to their notebooks. So those are the basic steps. But before we go off to the classroom to try it out, I want to take a step back. Clearly, we've been focused on the power of before reading, but there's a more general habit to be learned here, and that's the power of before learning. The pivotal power of getting the lay of the land, of establishing a purpose for what you're about to do. It's something we can teach our youngest learners. Yes, making predictions and getting ready for reading, but also before we begin a group project. Slow it down. Don't just start working. Think about what you're going to need to do. It matters so much in a science lab. Understanding the experiment before you do it. It's key to good problem solving in mathematics. Good problem solvers take the time to figure out what the problem is asking them to do before they get to work. And of course, it has a dramatic impact on tests of all kinds. Students who figure out what the demands of a task are before they begin working are students who succeed at higher levels than their peers. So how would we answer our guiding question now? How can previewing text strategically before reading make the reading more active and enhance comprehension? And here's what teachers tell us they see more of, and you can expect to see more of if you make this tool part of your classroom practice. Students recognize the power of slowing down to speed up. Don't just start reading. Slow down and preview first. You'll see students making and checking their predictions when reading, and that leads to active reading. You'll see more use of textual evidence, students supporting their ideas with evidence from the text. Students will become more aware of text structure, and their comprehension will improve. Don't forget about the resources you have in your PD resources, not just the tool in your book, also the PDFs of the student organizers and the Power Previewing poster. These can be real help to you in implementing this tool. So are you ready to use the tool? How are you going to model the process? How will you encourage deep reflection and student independence? If you can answer these questions, I think you're ready to move the tool to the classroom. Best of luck to you as you begin using this tool and implementing this tool. So are you ready to use the tool? Here are some questions to help. How will you introduce it and what texts are you going to use? How are you going to model the process? How will you assess and refine students' use of the tool? How will you encourage deep reflection and student independence? If you can answer these questions, I think you're ready to move the tool to the classroom. Best of luck to you as you begin using this tool in the classroom. And please tell us about what happens. What do you see? What do you notice? What happens with student achievement? We'd love to hear from you as you use this tool.